Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name's Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Friday?
Always happy on a Friday.
It's going to be a great day. We got a lot to talk about. Pro Bowl weekend, so it's not as exciting. We're taking a break from a Super Bowl. Flag football,
boy.
Yeah, flag football. It's great.
Boy.
It's great. You know what? The one major problem I have with now this being flag football is that Pro Bowls don't mean anything anymore. They used to mean something, I would say, to a lot of people. And if you think about it, I hate to throw a shot this early in the show. It's really the only accolade Eli Manning has ever gotten was 4 Pro Bowls. Don't mean to take major shots at Eli Manning, but it is the only
2 Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, but we're talking about regular season awards here. He doesn't have anything else. No All Pros, no MVPs, no Comeback Player of the Year. Just gonna throw that out there. He only has 4 Pro Bowls. But speaking about maybe average quarterbacks during the regular season. Cam Newton, let's jump right into the show. Cam Newton has been talking about Brock Purdy being this game manager for a very, very long time at this point, and he doubled down by listing his top 10 players, on the San Francisco 49ers. Now, what's actually kind of fascinating about this was, if you actually take a look at who he named, let's bring it up right now, he listed 9 guys. He listed only 9 guys when it comes to his top 10 49ers list. And for those who are listening on Spotify, I read it to you. So I don't know if he was supposed to put this in any particular order, but he did say that Christian McCaffrey 1, Trent Williams 2, Debo 3, Brandon Ayuk 4, George Kittle 5, Nick Bosa 6, Fred Warner 7, Dre Greenlaw 8, and Brock Purdy at number 9. So this was his list. He didn't list anyone else. Maybe Eric Armstead. Maybe you add him to the list. I'm not entirely sure, but that was his top 10, or I guess top 9 technically, 49er list. I want to know, do you agree or disagree with Cam Newton's take that it doesn't matter what he's been doing so far, because Brock Purdy is not the number 1 player on his offense or a top 3 player on his team, he has to be a game manager and he can never be a game changer like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, any one of these quarterbacks. Do you agree or disagree with Cam Newton?
I totally disagree. I think that Brock Purdy has played very well this year. He was in consideration for MVP for a while there. He had some ups and downs during the season. He had 3 games he lost in a row there. Pieces were missing at that point. Other players injured, and the offense kind of lost its mojo and didn't have its rhythm. And he played poorly during those games, and he got beat badly by the Ravens. Those were his low moments, but he had some pretty high moments too. He can throw the ball well. He throws it very accurately. He knows where to go with the ball. His turnover ratio is low. His touchdown ratio is high. In the playoffs, he's come up big. When they were behind, he kept his cool, and they caught up and won the game against the Lions by 3 points, but it really was 10. I mean, it's kind of almost garbage time when the Lions got their 7 points to bring it within 3. In that game, he showed that he can improvise. He ran on several plays to get first downs in critical moments. So I think that's the Cam Newton is wrong, and I don't think on any team the quarterback who plays as well as Brock Purdy plays winds up number 9 and as the best player on the team, because he handles the ball on every play, and he did a damn good job this year with it.
I'm going to agree with you that he did a very good job. But I'll give Cam Newton credit when it comes to this. He never called Brock Purdy trash or ever said he was a bad quarterback. And this is where the game manager aspect of it sort of gets a negative connotation. When people call when people call players game managers, normally that's a negative connotation where you're calling them trash or not good enough to compete. And to Cam Newton's credit, he never said Brock Purdy was trash. But I'm going to kind of agree with him because it's very, very difficult to remove Brock Purdy from this team and see how he performs, because that'll probably never happen. We saw something today where the owner of the 49ers was told by Kyle Shanahan back in 2022 that Brock Purdy was the best quarterback out of Trey Lance, Jimmy G, and Purdy. Yet they still started Trey Lance to give him a shot, then replaced him with Jimmy G because they were paying him for that year, and then Brock Purdy was the third option once Jimmy G finished out that 7-3 streak that he had. But Tom Brady was called a game manager. Dak Prescott, he's bad in the playoffs, but Dak Prescott, he's called a game manager according to Cam Newton. Like, game manager and by the way, I disagree with the fact that Tom Brady was a game manager. Early on, he was. Then you have that middle span where it was, no, he's not a game manager. He's the one making the big-time plays. And even in those Super Bowls, he wasn't a game manager. He was making the come-from-behind wins there. So maybe this negative connotation to, being a game manager is what it is. But I've showed this before, and I want to show it again. So we've heard from Trent Williams, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, talking about how Brock Purdy doesn't get the credit he deserves. And I've showed this before, and I'll show it again. These were two quotes from Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, and I'll read them. So Trent Williams goes, he's a baller, man. I don't know why that's ever been in question. Just hate to see him get slighted all the time because I feel like he is such a good talent, such a good quarterback. He's the main reason why we're playing so well. Christian McCaffrey goes, he's such a talented quarterback. He doesn't get enough credit in my eyes at all. He is a great leader, super smart, can make any throw, and just a great guy to be around. Some very, very nice comments. And I showed you this, and you're like, well, it's great things to say about Brock Purdy. And lo and behold, it was on Jimmy G last year. So you can't really take into account when players say, oh, he's a great quarterback. I don't understand why he gets slighted all the time. Because they were saying the same criticisms about Jimmy Garoppolo, and yet Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey still stepped up and said, once again, he can make every throw, such a great guy to be around. And then the big one that I think is Trent Williams goes, he's the main reason why we're playing so well. We heard that again about Brock Purdy this year. And I'm not saying Brock Purdy is the same level as Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a better version of Jimmy Garoppolo because he can make more deep balls. He's not making the crucial mistakes that Garoppolo did, and he's playing much better in the playoffs. But it's true. It's true. He is being as efficient, as effective, just a little bit more than Jimmy Garoppolo was. Because let's go down the resume, shall we? In the years Jimmy Garoppolo was with San Francisco, how many NFC Championship games did he make?
2.
How many has Brock Purdy made so far?
1.
2. Well, he's made 2. He made 2.
That's right.
But he unfortunately he got hurt. Right.
One.
But he didn't make it to the NFC Championship game. How many Super Bowls did Jimmy Garoppolo make it to?
1.
How many did Brock Purdy make it to?
1.
Now I understand first 2 years of the career, but as we speak right now, because we don't know what will happen later on, Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy have the same accomplishments. If you take a look at it, and you've always talked about a win is a win is a win. I like to go a little bit more in depth, but if we take it at face value, Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo have accomplished the same exact thing on the 49ers because that team is so talented that it takes someone who's competent and who could run Kyle Shanahan's system and be effective. Once again, Matt Schaub with Kyle Shanahan's system got to the Pro Bowl when the Pro Bowl actually mattered. Matt Ryan was an MVP candidate and made a Super Bowl underneath Kyle Shanahan's offensive scheme. So Kyle Shanahan's able to form these quarterbacks and make them very, very effective, very, very good. And then add on top of that, I'll give him credit. I'll give Cam Newton credit. These are incredible players. I don't think anyone could dispute that. McCaffrey, Williams on the offensive line, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, all great yards after the catch guys and can really dominate. And then on the defensive side is Bosa, Warner, Greenlaw. And then I would also include Charvarius Ward, great lockdown cornerback. And maybe if you want to add Armstead as well, you could add him on the defensive front. This team is super talented. I don't think anyone should be shocked that the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl. Because if they didn't, that would be underwhelming. And I could also say that Brock Purdy, if you just add on top of the talent, I think McCaffrey, and I've talked about this before, McCaffrey is more valuable to the team than Purdy is. Because think of it, in the Raven game, Purdy threw 4 interceptions and looked horrible. He got benched in that game. He was hurt. You could argue, whatever the case may be. McCaffrey still had over 100 yards in that game. He was still performing. He still scored the only touchdown when Purdy was out there.
When it mattered most and the lights were brightest and the 49ers were behind 24-7, who brought him back and had him win?
Purdy was the quarterback when that happened. Purdy was the quarterback.
He made the plays. He didn't have any turnovers. His passing was very accurate.
At that time, he didn't have any turnovers.
He improvised and ran when he needed to for big games and first downs. I think he played up to the game, up to the light when the lights were the brightest. The other thing I would say about Cam Newton, he compared Brock Purdy to other, as he called game managers, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, and Tua. Well, I would say I don't think Dak Prescott is a game manager. I don't think he's a game manager. He is a prolific passer, right? And he can run too. And he assesses the situation and he changes the plays at the line of scrimmage a lot. And he runs when he needs to. When he sees that the receivers are covered. And Jared Goff certainly isn't a game manager because Dan Campbell is constantly gambling in the games, going for it on fourth down,
right,
doing all kinds of uncharacteristic and unconventional things. How can Jared Goff be a game manager? I don't see that at all. And Tua, I think that maybe there's a little truth to that because they didn't want him to get a concussion again this year. They kind of protected him a little bit, I think, and that had something to do with the play calling. But I just think Cam Newton is totally off base here.
Well, and then some people like to criticize.
Do you think Jared Goff is a game manager?
I think. See, here's the problem with that, right? Because the way Cam Newton described a game manager is you're not a top 3 player on your offense or on your team, and you're not the best player on your offense.
There's only one quarterback out there playing at a time.
But that's how Cam Newton defined a game manager versus a game changer. A game changer is a top 3 player on your team and the number 1 or 2 guy on your offense. When it comes to Jared Goff, you could argue Amon-Ra St. Brown. You could argue Jahmyr Gibbs this season. I mean, he was the most. You could argue Penei Sewell, an offensive lineman.
I disagree.
No, but I will say this: against the 49ers, he completed 5 of 7 third downs in the first half, and he looked really good. They were tearing up that 49er defense. But I will contest this as well. The big time plays were Jamison Williams had a 42-yard run. You also had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery getting crucial first downs. But Jared Goff was the one executing a decent amount of those third downs as well. So and that's the problem. If you define it by Cam Newton's logic, then Jared Goff is a bridge game manager.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the quarterback is a unique position on a team. You can't.
Correct.
You really can't compare. I think you can compare quarterbacks on other teams, but comparing the quarterback's talent to other players on the team, they don't handle the ball on every play.
Correct.
The quarterback handles the ball on every play.
Correct.
A defensive player doesn't do that at all.
Right.
They're
hoping to.
They hoping to, but they hardly ever see the ball.
Right.
So how can Brock Purdy be the 9th best player on the team with 3 defensive players ahead of him when they never touch the ball? That to me makes no sense at all. I'm sorry. You could compare Brock Purdy to other quarterbacks.
Right.
That's valid to me because they handle the ball on every play. Not these other players don't. So I don't think that's a valid comparison.
Now, here's where it gets a little bit dicey. And I think we should go through this. It's who would you take Brock Purdy over? And we talk about Josh Allen. I wouldn't. Personally, I wouldn't. Tua, probably. Because I think Purdy is better as a quote-unquote game manager within his system than Tua is in the Dolphins' system with Tyreek Hill. We saw he was extremely dependent on Tyreek Hill this entire season. Lamar Jackson. Would you take Purdy over Lamar Jackson?
No.
I wouldn't either. Then you go.
Give me some more comparisons.
Joe Burrow. I would say Joe Burrow's a game changer right now.
No, I wouldn't take him.
And then we go, I think C.J. Stroud, we showed he can, like the difference between C.J. Stroud and Brock Purdy is the talent is not to the level of the 49ers, and we've already seen C.J. Stroud fight through adversity.
I wouldn't take Purdy over C.J. Stroud.
Really?
Nope.
Well,
because C.J. Stroud's a rookie, and he showed that he's.
Well, now we're seeing Purdy fighting through adversity now, though.
He was considered. He could have been considered for most valuable player at one point during the year.
He was.
Yeah. So he's a unique talent, and I put him ahead. I would put him ahead of Purdy, given that he's only a rookie.
Wow. Yeah. Mahomes, no, I'll answer that for you.
No.
This one's interesting. Justin Herbert. Would you take Purdy over?
I put Purdy.
I think I would as well. Yeah. I think I would as well. Dak Prescott, yes. Yes. Jared Goff.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, a lot like
Daniel Jones.
Oh,
yes.
God. Oh God, that's not even a question. How about Matt Stafford?
I would because he's so much younger. And where he is in his career compared to where Stafford was at the same point, Purdy, I think, has a chance to be better than Stafford.
So right now, we're saying Purdy is like a top 10 quarterback in the league.
I think so.
And if we're talking about talent alone, not effectiveness or whatever, talent alone, like Josh Allen arm strength, Mahomes arm strength, Lamar Jackson's mobility, he's a middle of the pack guy. He does have a pretty nice arm. His mobility is underrated, but it's not to the level of a Mahomes.
He runs when he has to.
Right. And
he doesn't choose to run first.
Right. And that's
sometimes Lamar does that.
He should have done that in the playoff game.
Should have done it more in the playoff game.
Right. So I think if we're talking about, success with your team, I would say, like, I had Brock Purdy as, I think, the number 6 quarterback at the very peak of this season. Now, going into next season,
it's pretty high.
It is pretty high, but he was playing at a super high level, number 1 in basically every statistical category.
Where would you put him compared to Josh Allen?
I would say, if I'm ranking the top 5 quarterbacks off the top of my head, right, it would be Mahomes 1, Burrow 2. I still think Burrow healthy. He is the only guy who and really the Bengals in general, have been the only team to really bother Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I have to put Burrow at number 2. Then I would probably put Josh Allen 3. I don't love what I saw from Hurts. I would put Lamar 4. And then it's really up for debate between Herbert, and then you could argue Hurts maybe, but I really don't love what I saw. Was he playing hurt the entire season? Maybe. But that offense did not look the same.
Yeah.
So that number 5 spot would be a battle probably between Herbert, Hurts, and you could probably throw in another quarterback.
Josh Allen has a lot of talent, but his head, he gets overhyped.
He does.
In games, and he makes mistakes. And when he starts making mistakes, they snowball. I think that's a problem for him in the red zone. Right. He makes too many mistakes.
Last season, he led the league in red zone interceptions. Yeah. The reason why I have to keep him at least within the top 5, if not the top 3, is the numbers. Like, he gets like 4,400 yards. He led the league in touchdowns or close to it. Like, the numbers say he's a top 3 quarterback in the league.
Yeah, well,
so
what's the number that means the most? The wins.
I'll give you that.
In the playoffs, they have been failures. In the playoffs, they haven't gotten to the championship game.
I'm not going to dispute that, but I'm going to say I more so disagree with Cam Newton's take than I agree with it. There are some parts I agree with it, and this negative connotation around game managers. You take a look at some of the game managers in the NFL, or at one point some of these players were called game managers. Like, I guarantee you, Manning was called a game manager, Brady called a game manager. There are a couple quarterbacks out there that are very successful and called game managers. We just saw Jared Goff take his team to the NFC Championship game. He's being called a game manager. Like, game managers, I think it's used in a negative connotation, when really, you don't lose your team the game. Most of the time, if you're a game manager, you don't lose your team the game. Game changers, I think, are very volatile.
That's right. They take a high, their risk level is higher.
Right.
They take more risk.
Because you have to. Sometimes you have to. So, I would say we both disagree with Cam Newton's take on Brock Purdy being the 10th, or, on his podcast, he only listed 9 players. So,
I mean, if you were to take Mahomes versus Purdy,
I'll take Mahomes 10 times.
Mahomes is definitely not a game manager.
Correct.
And so if you look at those two compared, you would say, yeah, Brock Purdy's more a game manager than Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
For sure. Right? If you compared Lamar Jackson to Brock Purdy, right? That's Lamar is not a game
Lamar
manager.
Is a game changer.
He's a game changer, right? Joe Burrow, he was hurt.
He was hurt.
He's been hurt 2 seasons now. He's been hurt for a better part of the season. So I don't know whether he. I guess in the year they went to the Super Bowl, I'd call him a game changer.
Absolutely,
right?
He had no offensive line.
He had no offensive line, getting sacked all the time and still making the plays. So I guess I'd put him there. Matthew Stafford.
I'll say this. I think he was a game changer, but the Lions in general were not the good enough team to make it to the playoffs.
But how about on the Rams? Do you think he's a game changer on the Rams?
I think that Super Bowl year, 100% he was a game changer. That defense obviously helped. But on the offensive side, he was dashing at the Cooper Cup every single damn day.
Yeah.
And I would say, he was more of a game changer that year. And think about this year. You saw a lackluster defense that picked it up in the back half of the season, an offensive line that was depleted last season. It seemed to play better this season, and Matthew Stafford had a pretty good year.
Well, they got their running game going. That helped
as well
Stafford
as Puka Nacua, all of a sudden 5th round pick, having had like the best rookie season that a receiver's ever had. So, it's just an interesting thing about. But we disagree with Cam Newton's take. All right, let's get into some news that has been disputed for the past couple days. So what came out yesterday was this reporter from KTLA who tweeted, was it David Pingalore, hearing from @NBA Peeps at King James is the top of the Lakers list to trade the 39-year-old. Pelinka is looking for the right team to dance with and is close to a suitor. Now, what's kind of interesting about this was LeBron James and Anthony Davis were out yesterday against the Celtics. They ended up beating the Celtics. But also, LeBron sent this cryptic tweet of a hourglass emoji about to end. And so people were speculating that this was basically the end for LeBron James in a Los Angeles Lakers uniform. So, as a topic, and also I'll say this, Rich Paul came out and said that LeBron James is not asking to be traded, and he won't be traded. So I want to know, could you see LeBron leaving the Lakers before the trade deadline is up, I believe on February 8th? Can you see LeBron in a different uniform by the end of the season?
I don't think so. I mean, their record is 25-25. They're 9th in the West, so they qualify for the play-in tournament. And they could get better in the rest of the season. Season still has quite a few games to go, 32 games to go. So I think that they'll hang on to LeBron. If they did consider trades, well, they'd want a lot back, and most teams aren't going to be able to want to give a lot because they know LeBron's a rental, unless they're able to draft his son, who he said he's going to play with next season. So I think most teams would not want to give up much to get him. So I think that crossed the Lakers' minds, and LeBron was the one that put the emoji out there. I don't know. His agent said we don't intend to ask for a trade, and the Lakers aren't going to trade him. So it's just talk, hype. I don't think there's much to it.
So you're not buying into
the trade.
What this TV KTLA guy said about LeBron James and Rob Pelinka potentially trading LeBron James.
No, I don't buy into it.
Well, I'm not saying that there's a lot to this, but for the sake of, I don't know, creating some news, talking about the topic,
it's interesting to think about.
It definitely
it's fun
is
to talk about. Yeah, who would you think the deal would be if they?
I think
if there was a trade.
The team. First of all, this is what I'm going to say. There are a lot of teams that are much better title contenders than the Lakers are right now. Even with LeBron and AD healthy, they're still the 9th seed. They're still the 9th seed. And I think no matter what happens, I think the Lakers are too hung up on LeBron James being, he's a Los Angeles Laker. We're getting tickets, selling out Crypto.com arena. It's great for sales. Just like how any team that drafts Bronny is doing it also to get his dad, LeBron James. For me, I think the one team that desperately needs this piece, because I saw it last night against the Indiana Pacers, is the New York Knicks. And the way that this trade could work, and this is probably going to happen at least with one of these players being gone next season, is you would just get LeBron James, and in return, the Knicks would trade Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, and 2 first-round picks. Because I think, really, the Knicks have like 8 first-round picks for the next couple seasons. Like, they got a lot to spend. Evan Fournier is a contractual obligation. He's $18.8 million. I don't know why the Knicks are paying him so much for him to rot on the bench and play like 3 minutes, throughout the season. Julius Randle, he comes up very, very small in the playoffs. LeBron James is not this guy who can come out and consistently put up, 35 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. He's 39 years old. He's averaging about 25 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. In the playoffs, and he's not going to have these consistent dominant games. And if LeBron is still having to be that the number one option on the team, now he wants Anthony Davis to be that, but Anthony Davis, we've seen over the past couple of seasons, he gets injured when he plays, he's not consistently great. He does have some big-time moments, but the consistency is not where I'm sure the Lakers and LeBron James would like it. On the Knicks, you don't need LeBron James to be dominant and be carrying as a one-piece, because we've seen this season, Jalen Brunson is having an incredible year. And not only that, you have right now a guy by the name of OG Anunoby who defensively is great for the Knicks, and offensively, he can hit a corner 3 like I've never seen before. He's like automatic from the corner. You also have an interesting piece in Dante DiVincenzo, who's on the Warriors last season, where he's shooting 10% better from the 3 than he did last season. He's shooting incredible from 3. Not only that, you might, and for my trade, you didn't have to. You also have Quentin Grimes, who tends to have a hot hand sometimes. He's also your defensive piece. So you don't need LeBron to do everything. Now, if the Lakers make the playoffs, you're going to need LeBron to step up big time.
Mm-hmm.
more
Well,
consistently.
That's very interesting, Nate. But do you think the Lakers would give up LeBron James and only get Julius Randle in return? And the 2 first-round picks. Now, listen, the 2 first-round picks aren't worth anything, really, because LeBron with the Knicks they definitely get to the playoffs, and they would probably last through a couple of rounds. So their pick is going to be low. It's not going to be that first-round pick isn't going to be worth much.
Well, the this year's first-round pick that I included was Dallas's, which is top 10 protected. Dallas this season is, they're having an all right season. Not great, not terrible. They're 8th right now. So, you might need to add more. Another team that I could see just for the sake of it, and there's been rumors for like the past 3 seasons, and you mentioned it pre-show, is the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
LeBron James has seemingly openly campaigned to want to play with Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you would probably need to trade 2 pieces, one young piece and one very, very underwhelming piece this season. Jonathan Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins. You'll probably need to trade those 2 players. Wiggins had his great season during the championship run, and we've seen him get benched for Kuminga. Now he's back in the starting lineup, get benched again. Inconsistencies all around. Jonathan Kuminga, they're hoping for him to play a bigger role and exceed in that. It doesn't look like that, or excel in that, excuse me. So, and you would also obviously need to include a couple first-round picks in there as well. But that could be another team that I honestly think you add another veteran piece, so now you have...
What are the Warriors' record right now?
Warriors...
They're doing poorly, right?
The Warriors currently, they are out of the play-in at the 12th seed at 20-24. And I don't know if Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, maybe if you want to include him there, or Andrew Wiggins could uplift the Lakers in a way that, LeBron James at 39 years old maybe can at the long-term level.
I think the Warriors trade if it was going to happen, has more chance than the Knicks trade, because the Knicks are playing great. Since they did
the 3 seed in the East.
Since they did the trade there with the Raptors, they've been lights out. I mean, that really made a lot of sense. It's worked out extremely well for them.
Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, and Isaiah Hartenstein. They were 1, 2, and 3 in plus-minus in the month of January.
Hartenstein is a surprise,
especially
the way he's
because
playing.
Mitchell Robinson was their supreme rebounder, and Hartenstein needed to fill that role in. And now with Julius Randle out, you're now having to play guys like Jericho Sims and Hartenstein. You're going to need to have them step up. And last night was incredible against the Pacers, because the Pacers are the number 1 scoring team in the NBA. They're horrible defensively, but the number 1 team in the NBA. You got to keep up with them offensively. Now, they were down for a decent part of the game, and it looked like they were down and out. Then Jalen Brunson decides, let me just take over this game, and they came up with a massive win. By the way, to extend I believe they're now 8 straight wins. So, for me, and by the way, they're only a half game out of the number 2 seed, which is bizarre. It's crazy how this New York team, who was in 6th place like a couple weeks ago, decided to go, let's go 14-2 in our 16 games, and now all of a sudden they're half game out of the 2 seed. The Knicks are playing phenomenally, but in the playoffs, I'm still worried that it's going to be Brunson or bust. Like, that's my one major fear, because we've seen it the past couple, or like last year, where Julius Randle comes up small, Hart, he gets into foul trouble, Mitchell Robinson offensively is a liability. He's an inside guy. He's also slow on defense as well, so Bam Adebayo was just running by him every time.
I do think if LeBron wound up with the Warriors, it could be inspirational for them. With Curry, Paul, Draymond Green, Thompson, and LeBron James. Wow. Yeah. I mean, name-wise, that's pretty impressive, right? Those guys are getting probably the oldest team in the NBA as a result of that trade. But, and they might be able to get it done. Wiggins is still considered a really good player, I think.
He's really good, but
and Kuminga is young, so if there's some draft picks thrown in there, I think that could happen. I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah. So there you go. Potentially LeBron James.
And I don't think LeBron James coming to New York. He hates James Dolan.
That's why he didn't go to the Knicks back in, I believe, 2010. Was he told? I forgot who it was. He told someone that he hates James Dolan, and the Knicks were very, very close, and it just fell through. Went to Miami. So maybe the Knicks have an opportunity. And besides, I'll also say this just for the sake of saying it. LeBron James has a player option next season that he'll probably deny and then go to wherever Bronny James is. The Knicks could make a massive move here. that it's really just a win now type move, because who knows how great Bronny's going to be in the NBA. People are going to draft Bronny, maybe, and depends on where they draft. If they draft him high, that's because they're in a win now mode with LeBron James to come onto their team. I can't see, if Bronny is not a supreme talent in college and they think he could be great in the NBA, that they would draft him very high. If they do that, in my mind, they're thinking, okay, we're going to get LeBron James to play with us. That's really the main reason why, if he goes maybe top 10 and he's not really a top 10 player in the draft, that they would want to draft him that high. And the Knicks could do that as sort of a, hey, LeBron, let's go round 2 again. It's been 14 years.
I mean, LeBron in New York would be quite a lot of talk.
Absolutely.
There'd be a lot of hype with LeBron in New York.
Yeah.
Julius Randle, what are his stats?
By the way, I'll say this about Julius Randle. He's out for the next 2 to 3 weeks with a shoulder injury that he suffered. This season, he's 24-9-5.
So not much different than LeBron.
He has 2 less assists, 2 more rebounds, and the points are basically the same.
But LeBron brings a different hype.
LeBron can play every position.
Yeah.
If LeBron James goes downhill, get out of his way.
Do you think it would the complementary with Brunson, LeBron James? Because LeBron James handles the ball a lot. He's a point forward.
I think it would take a load off Brunson, because Brunson has to do a lot for the Knicks. We saw it in the playoffs. He literally, if he didn't shoot very well, they were not winning games, because R.J. Barrett wouldn't hit shots. Quentin Grimes didn't have a great offensive series against the Heat. It was a struggle for the Knicks some days. And defensively, we were at game 1. They would do the backdoor cuts, the Heat would, easy points. The cross-court passes that Kevin Love was doing, like, it was stupid stuff like that. And I've said it before. The Knicks last year against the Heat, they were so bad, they beat themselves up. The Heat didn't outplay them. They just couldn't. They didn't have the motivation, and Randall even said that. Randall said they just wanted it more. So, I think the Knicks need to do some soul searching. I think that they need to, think about making some big-time trades. Now, there's been rumors that they're making some trades, potentially at the draft, and they're making a big move for a big-time player in the offseason. But it doesn't look like that now, because there's not been a lot to say, oh, yeah, the Knicks are going to go get this guy, or whatever the case may be. And I think that, Donovan Mitchell has been, he wanted to go to the Knicks before he went to the Cavs. But I forget I think it was James Dolan. He didn't want to give up R.J. Barrett, let alone you just gave him up.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, I would 100% say that is the case, and yet you've given up for OG Anunoby. But I don't know, maybe. I've also seen Devin Booker. I really don't think Devin Booker is going to go there.
No.
LeBron James, player option, maybe. It really depends on who's willing to take the shot to see if LeBron is serious.
You know what? Maybe LeBron James' son is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft.
Maybe. I really don't think that's the case personally, but someone's probably willing to take that risk. All right, we talked about college basketball player Bronny James. Let's talk some college football with Caleb Williams. So yesterday on The Herd, Colin Cowherd said, when they were talking about this topic, that Caleb Williams, he heard through the grapevine that Caleb Williams and his group do not want to be in Chicago. Then today it comes out, and Caleb Williams' camp talks to Colin Cowherd today, and he says that they don't want to seem anti-Chicago. They don't want to seem like they just really hate losing. We saw Caleb Williams when he was losing. He went to go over cry to his mom or whatever the case may be. He hates losing, and Chicago, we've known, they're not a great culture when it comes to winning. They've never really had a good quarterback. So this entire situation is very, very interesting. I want to know, do you have any problem with what Caleb Williams and his group said or want about potentially pushing his way out of Chicago if they were to draft him?
Well, it was kind of a lukewarm endorsement of Chicago, right? I mean, they said, they have a willingness to consider Chicago. They didn't say, wow, we want to be in Chicago. Caleb's going to want to go there. He's going to want to give that franchise what they've been missing, and they're going to win a Super Bowl with Caleb. They never said that. They just said, don't say that we're totally against him, but, we're not totally, it didn't sound like they're totally for it either. So it was kind of a lukewarm endorsement. That's how I viewed it. And I don't know where Colin Cowherd is getting his info. I think he was kind of just trying to make noise.
Really?
I don't know if he really had somebody saying.
You don't think he has sources?
I don't really think there was a reliable source that said Caleb Williams doesn't want to have anything to do with Chicago, because they came right out quickly and walked it back.
Right. Yeah. That day they called him. He went on the air today and said that. When it comes to this, right, I don't love the behavior that Caleb Williams is displaying, because we heard even before Colin Cowherd said this was that Caleb Williams wanted to be not on a historically losing franchise. Chicago's never had a 4,000-yard passer in their entire franchise's history, and they're one of the oldest teams in the NFL. What I also have a problem with is that there was a report out by Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk where he said that Caleb Williams is looking to get a partial ownership stake in whatever team drafts him. What? When has that ever happened where a quarterback who just got drafted gets partial ownership stake of the team that drafted him?
It's crazy.
I don't think that's a good look. And also, people say, "Oh, it's a Peyton Manning thing. It could be the Eli Manning thing." Yeah, give me the list of amount of times that's worked, where someone has forced their way out of a team, and it's become successful. And I really think that this idea that Caleb Williams, first of all, I'm not going to deny the amount of talent this kid has. He has an incredible amount of talent. But
he wears an unlucky number.
What, 13?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes, and this might be a character thing, if you're not willing to go to a franchise where you have to face adversity, do you not want to see it? Are you afraid of it? It's the NFL. It's an entirely different breed.
I think it puts a bad halo over him, right? That I think they have to be careful. They want to give the image that he's a spoiled kind of guy, and he doesn't like the adversity or the challenge of going to a team that's been poor in the past. I think that's really bad.
Did Trevor Lawrence have a problem with the Jaguars drafting him after they had a horrific season?
No,
because he faced the adversity.
Right.
Did C.J. Stroud have a problem with the fact that the Texans went 3-13-1 the prior season?
No.
Did he have a problem with that?
He took him to the playoffs.
Won 10 games. And by the way, this is not the Chicago team that's horrible. They won 7 games this season.
Yeah.
They won 7 games. So there was some growth there. Not only that, they added a couple nice defensive pieces. They added Sweat, who led the team in sacks after being there for half the season. The offensive line needs a little bit of work. You have a number 1 receiver. Cole Kmet's a very good tight end. Darnell Mooney's a good wide receiver too. It's not like this cover is completely bare. We're not talking like the Cardinals, who need a better offensive line, a better defense, another tight end, another receiver. It isn't like, I don't know, some teams like Tennessee. The offensive line is abysmal. The defense needs a lot of work. The running game, you're about to lose your best running back. No, we've seen some competency from the Bears this season. Now, could it be you're afraid of the historical nature of the fact that they can't develop a quarterback to be a 4,000-yard passer? Maybe. But you could change that. With the amount of talent, and people are calling him a generational talent. Now, that word has been thrown away around too much. We said Trevor Lawrence, generational talent. We haven't seen a quarterback like him in 10 years. Well, now we're seeing again from Caleb Williams 4 years from when that was said. So maybe he's not generational in the fact that he's going to step in and have, success immediately. But I think you need to be put to the test. And honestly, in my opinion, in my eyes, if you have the drive to succeed, that adversity early on will make you a better quarterback down the road. Like, for instance, Brock Purdy, the 4 games that he lost were really ugly. Really ugly. Interceptions, poor play. But I think he's a good enough quarterback where we've seen him in the playoffs. The team steps up and they're able to win. They just came back from a 17-point halftime loss.
Yeah.
And they stepped up and won. So we see these quarterbacks who want to fight through adversity. They have short-term memory. You throw an interception, you come right back down and you score a touchdown on the next drive.
Yeah.
If Caleb Williams is afraid of potentially facing adversity in Chicago with a team that has improved from the prior year, to me, that's a character issue.
Well, I think, he's very young, and he's taking advice from the people around him. I think he has to watch out for that. Maybe he's not getting very good advice, and you have to be careful about what they say. And that's really important. So it'll be interesting to watch this and see what happens.
I'll also say this, right? Let's just say he doesn't want to go to Chicago, who once again won 7 games. Let's take a look at the next 3 options. Let's go next 6 options. Washington, is that a better situation? I don't think so.
In Chicago,
they went
no.
4-13. What about the Patriots? New head coach, new OC, new DC, not great weapons, offensive lines in ruins.
Great ownership.
If you want, a lot of people are not liking Robert Kraft and his ownership strategy. But if you want to say that, fair enough.
He has been a great owner for 24 years.
I don't think this would happen, but we talked about before. Arizona, like I mentioned, defense needs to be improved. Offensive line has some issues. They need another receiver.
They still have Kyler Murray.
LA Chargers, you're not going there. They're not going to get another quarterback. The Giants, no offensive line. No really good developed weapon. The running back doesn't want to be there. The defense was okay, but you just lost your DC because he hated Brian Dable.
Mm-hmm. It's a big market.
New York's a big market.
The Jets.
Tennessee Titans. They have a rookie. They have now, they have Will Levis as well.
They're
but
not going to go off
no
him.
offensive line. DeAndre Hopkins is still there, but he's aging another year. Defense, don't love it. You're about to lose your best running back. Atlanta. Maybe. Atlanta's the only option where I could say maybe. But you're not going at pick number 8. Unless Atlanta moves up, you're not going at pick 8. The one that could be interesting is Las Vegas. Because they just signed Cliff Kingsbury, who was on the USC staff, I believe, this past season. If Las Vegas moves up with Antonio Pierce being a players forward coach, that might be an interesting situation. You're in a massive market, Las Vegas, with a player-friendly coach, with an offensive coordinator that said that you are the best talent he's ever seen. But that would require some massive moves from Las Vegas to go from 13 to 1.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening personally. But that probably would be the best situation for you as a quarterback.
Maybe with what the Bears are hearing, they'll trade down. Maybe they'll trade that pick.
Or go get Marvin Harrison if they want to go keep Justin Fields. Maybe. But then again,
I mean, maybe that
you
raises a little question in the minds of the Bears when they hear the lukewarm response to this, which I think was hype from Colin Cowherd. That we're not against the Chicago Bears. It doesn't, but they didn't come out and say, "Wow, we want to go there." Caleb
or just keep the neutral field.
Caleb would be totally excited to be the Bears quarterback and would try to help their team get to a Super Bowl.
Or just keep the neutral side of it. We are excited just to be a part of the NFL draft and just going to be satisfied with any team that drafts me.
That would have been a lot better answer than what they said.
Yeah, so, who knows? Caleb Williams, draft's coming up in a couple months. We're going to see if, if there are any drafting, trade-altering moves. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up, we got a couple of good topics here. The Athletic. They wrote like a bombshell report with 30 sources within the Jets organization talking about this season's downfall when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, Robert Saleh, Zach Wilson, all of it. And also, Dan Quinn. The coaching carousel is finally over. We grade every single head coaching hire, who we like, who we dislike, and the reasons why. We'll talk about all that right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the content.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. It is great to have you in on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. we got a great show planned for you, and we're going to close it out right now with a couple topics left. Let's start with this one, though. The Athletic wrote this massive report when it comes to the New York Jets. They were on Hard Knocks this season. Aaron Rodgers, the next great quarterback for the New York Jets, a Brett Favre-ian type of move from Woody Johnson. Robert Saleh, the head coach. Zach Wilson, what's the future for him? And they did this massive report with 30 sources with inside the Jets, mostly anonymous sources, which is sort of how reports happen in today's NFL. A couple crazy quotes from here, specifically one of which that says, one Jets coach went, "This is such an effing mess, something has to change." Another one said that Robert Saleh, when these rumors that, Zach Wilson didn't want to play because he was afraid of this offensive line and afraid of getting hurt, that Robert Saleh would confiscate some cell phones. What's going on here? There was another source that said that Aaron Rodgers was the actual GM, and the GM who was assigned to be the GM, Joe Douglas, was the assistant GM to Aaron Rodgers. Very, very interesting situation. I don't know. This is a crazy situation, and yet we're in for another season with Aaron Rodgers coming back from his Achilles injury. I want to know, do you think the Jets are doomed for another underwhelming season and continuing, potentially, depending on how you take this, by the way, the top 4 sports, the longest playoff drought within the 4 major sports? Is it impending for the New York Jets?
Well, just one more quote out of this article. Those sources that were anonymously quoted describe the team as riddled with excuse-making, a paranoid head coach, an ill-equipped offensive coordinator, and an organizational tunnel vision on the quarterback that rubs some of the teammates the wrong way. That's not a very good culture to have on your team. And I think that paranoia showed up there, as you said, where the Saleh said, "I'm going to take away all the coaches' cell phones because there's a leaker amongst us."
Right.
And he tried to get the leaker to come clean, saying nothing would happen to you. Come on. That's crazy. I mean, once he found out who the leaker was, that guy's going to be gone before you know it. So it's crazy. I think the Jets are dysfunctional. It starts at the top of Woody Johnson. And they're hanging on to all that coaching staff again for another year. They get pummeled in the New York media, particularly on the fan. Joe Benigno, a longtime Jets fan, bashes them regularly. I mean, he spends most of his show every day bashing the Jets. It's amazing. And people come on and they fuel it. They fuel it. So I think the Jets have a lot of trouble ahead here. I think if they can't do something to fix their offensive line, to give Rodgers a little time back there, it could be a very tough season for them. But they got all that said, I do think they will be better than they were this year, because Zach Wilson really he had another repeat performance of not even mediocrity. He was just very poor, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be better than that, even though he's 40 years old, as long as he's operating on 2 wheels and not one with that Achilles recovery from the Achilles injury.
So for me, I'm saying it's the Jets. They're in for another season of underwhelming performances. There's a lot wrong with this, and I've mentioned it before, right? Aaron Rodgers had basically full control of the Green Bay Packers because he did win a Super Bowl. He was like a 4 or 5-time MVP. I think it was 4-time MVP. Which, once again, we could talk about it. 2021, he got robbed.
He won 1 Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was a Super Bowl winner. He was a several-time MVP, although the last one, Brady should have won it. I think everyone acknowledges Brady probably should have won that MVP. And Brian Gutekunst was done with it. He was done with it. So he ships Rodgers off to New York. And the crazy thing about this is, not even before Aaron Rodgers got there were the Jets basically bowing down to him. Think about this, right? So the Jets have had one really good receiver in Garrett Wilson, another one in Elijah Moore. And what we saw? They shipped Moore out to the Browns. If you could say that he wanted to, whether or not that's the case, but Rodgers had this wish list. Remember, he had this list of wishes.
And he got most of his wishes.
He got most of them. Alan Lazard, David Bakhtiari, Mercedes Lewis, Randall Cobb. They got Randall Cobb, who once again did what?
Sat on the bench.
Nothing.
Yeah. And how about Lazard? Did even less.
Lazard was terrible, by the way.
Yeah.
he was actually abysmal. He had several drops. He played terribly.
He's ranked very low amongst the receivers.
It was terrible. Odell Beckham was
paid him
available.
$44 million too.
Yeah. That you could thank Rodgers for that. Odell was available. Hopkins was available. There were pieces out there that the Jets could have got that would have been better than anyone Rodgers ever could dream of wanting. But they didn't, because Rodgers wanted to feel comfortable. Brady wanted to feel comfortable too. But he's able to take a slight risk, right? He brought in Gronk, a very secure piece. He brought in a new running back, Leonard Fournette. And then he brought in volatile Antonio Brown. But ensured the Buccaneers staff that it would work out. And what did he do year one?
A Super Bowl win.
He won the Super Bowl. Yet Rodgers wants to bring in all of his buddies that are not very good. Overpaid, didn't perform, and no one should be surprised. Because what Rodgers did was, he was the GM. He took control of the New York Jets before he even got there. And there was also, there was something in this article where it talked about how Zach Wilson really wanted a direct line to Aaron Rodgers. But once Rodgers got hurt and late in the season, that connection was no longer there. And that obviously affects you. If you're a young quarterback and you have a Hall of Fame quarterback that you want to learn from, you want to learn from him. You want to talk to him. Rodgers had control of what plays get called in practice. Offensive players were not happy with that. Robert Saleh's tunnel vision on Aaron Rodgers and making sure he's happy, that rubbed some offensive players the wrong way. And also probably the worst hire, based on Sean Payton's opinion of him, Nathaniel Hackett, signing him as an OC after his abysmal season. And we all know what Sean Payton had to call him, one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. Rodgers wanted that piece as well. And everyone could tell Nathaniel Hackett was not equipped enough to handle adversity when it comes to, if somehow we're without 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers, what could we do? And the offense didn't move. So much so that they started playing younger players because this was a throwaway season. Lazard wasn't getting the amount of touches he probably should have, although he dropped a number of passes. Garrett Wilson was frustrated, as he should be. And this defense, according to Pro Football Focus, was the best defense in the NFL. They were third in total defense under, that metric of total defense, not being graded for your defense. So in total defense, they're third. Pro Football Focus rating of them, they're first. And the offense was arguably the worst offense we've ever seen. It was horrible. They couldn't put up points. They have the fewest offensive, I believe it's the fewest offensive touchdowns in the NFL for the past 2 seasons. Barely above the Patriots, or barely below the Patriots. So this team is bad on all accounts. And because it's the Jets, it's safe to say that, yes, they are doomed for another underwhelming season. They can never get the quarterback right. They just can't. They tried several times. They just can't get it right. And who's to say? I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers' first couple throws. The offensive line is still abysmal. That's why you could say, oh, Aaron Rodgers in there this past season, we would have done much better. Who said? He's 39 years old. Offensive line is a sieve.
Mm-hmm. Well, they may be able to fix the offensive line.
You have to. I would go into the draft saying...
I don't know if they do it through the draft. Maybe they'll make some trades.
They have the 10th overall pick. Get whatever the best offensive lineman is
do
at that
and
position.
Then trade for another one.
Dwayne Brown's old. Mekhi Becton's a bust. Elijah Vera Tucker's probably your best piece on the offensive line. You need a lot of moving pieces here on the offensive line. You got to get them. You got to get them. And if you don't, Rodgers is going to be running for his life like he was against the Bills for 75 seconds. Probably behind a...
He'd probably last more than 4 plays, but he'd probably wind up getting hurt.
You would hope so. So for me, my opinion is, just because it's the Jets, and historically it's safe to bet on the Jets being underwhelming and having a doomed year once again, I will give them credit, though. They did end a 15-game streak, a 7.5-year streak of losing to the Patriots. Thank you, Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, well, look at that game. I mean, it was snowing out. That was one of the most awful games. It was horrible. That was
what do you like to see Trevor Siemian?
I mean, it's not like the Jets played great, except for Hall. He was the reason. Yeah, they just kept handing it off to him. Many plays that didn't go anywhere. He had a few that were great, so that's why they won.
Yeah, so I really think, I don't think the Jets make the playoffs. I think they probably go 8-9. I think Rodgers has 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 picks. You go 8-9.
It's not a bad year.
You go 8, but it's not great. He could have double-digit picks. He could. Who knows? But I do know is that they're probably not going to make the playoffs. You would need some injury for them to make the playoffs. Whether it be Tua, whether it be anyone else in the
I think
AFC.
you know what? I think they could potentially sneak in there because they have Hall.
I can't say that.
They have Hall. They can. They've got to be able to improve the offensive line a little bit.
You would hope.
Considering how terrible it was. They have a very good defense, an excellent defense. They need another wide receiver. They have Garrett Wilson. He's good. They need one more, and they'll have Aaron Rodgers back. They should have a decent running game. If they can just upgrade the offensive line a little bit and get another wide receiver, I think that could be enough to get them into the playoffs.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But this report opens the eyes, I think, of many to just how bad the Jets were internally and how desperate it seemed like Robert. I mean, they mentioned how Robert Saleh was basically pleading for his job, saying, look at all these coaches that lost their quarterbacks. They have a losing record besides one. Look at what we're doing. We can't win either. If they can't win and I can't win, why should I lose my job? It's not a good look. It's really not a good look. I think Robert Saleh should keep his job because of the fact that there was so much, parity when it came to the Jets. But entering this season, he's on the hot seat. If they don't win a lot of games, he won't be there next. He won't finish out the year, probably. So there it is. All right, it's time now. So Dan Quinn was officially hired by the Commanders. I believe it was yesterday. So that means that Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll are all out of head coaching jobs after interviewing for a couple teams. They're all out. Meanwhile, we talk about, Dan Quinn had a head coaching job. Raheem Morris is back on the Falcons. A lot of these coaches, they made head coaching jobs. A few of them are out. So all the head coaching spots are filled. It's time to grade each of the head coaching spots. Let's start with the first one. Dan Quinn to the Washington Commanders. I'll start this off. So for me, I'm gonna give this a B. I'm gonna give it a B, and this is why. So the Commanders have the 32nd ranked defense this past season. They couldn't do anything. The offensive line was horrible. 65 sacks for Sam Howell. It was bad. The first half of the season looked pretty good. He was leading the league in passing yards. It was okay. The offense needs a little bit of work. I say definitely reinforce the offensive line. Your running backs aren't anything special. Your wide receivers have something there, but the defense was horrible. Don't understand why you traded away your two best pass rushers, but you did. I think Dan Quinn will get this defense back to track. They were 5th in points allowed when he was the DC of the Cowboys the past 2 seasons and averaged about the 7th or 8th best total defense in the NFL. I think Dan Quinn brings them to middle of the pack instead of dead last. I think the Commanders probably win 6 or 7 games. I give this grade a B for Dan Quinn, head coach of the Commanders. What about you? What do you say about this?
C minus.
C
minus. Okay. He's a great defensive coordinator. I give him that. The Cowboys' defense has been great under him. He had the Legion of Boom, right? But as a head coach for the Falcons, his defense was poor. And after the Super Bowl year, he went 7-9 twice and then was 0-5 before getting fired. So I think that, he probably can make the Washington defense a little better. And he needs an offensive coordinator, and he has the number 2 pick. So if he can get the offensive coordinator figured out and pick another quarterback who can play like C.J. Stroud did this past year, I think Washington improves. But I think that, having gone to the Super Bowl and then have his teams just kind of fall apart after that, not be able to rally them to be better when he had a lot of talent, I don't think it speaks highly, and I'm actually kind of surprised he got a job.
So would you say this is a good fit? A good enough fit, I should say.
No, I think that Bill Belichick would have been a better choice for the Commanders.
I would have gone Mike Vrabel, personally. I think Mike Vrabel brings the culture.
I think either of those two. Actually, I'm partial to Belichick, as you can see. I have Patriots shirt on. But Mike Vrabel would have been a better choice, too.
I think he would have been a much better choice. I think he brings the culture that the Commanders have needed.
Winning record, too, as a head coach.
Yeah, and I just think the Commanders need a culture rebuild. I don't know if Dan Quinn can bring the culture.
Dan Quinn's a defensive coach.
Well, so is Mike Vrabel. So is Belichick. So is Pete Carroll.
Well,
all defensive coaches were on the open market, and basically only one got the job, and that's Dan Quinn. But I say it's a B. I say, this is a growing fit. Fix the damn defense. It was 32nd in the league. They need something. The offense was not terrible. Late in the year, it was bad, and I don't understand why Jacoby Brissett didn't play more games.
They lost confidence in Sam Howell.
Oh, big time.
He played so poor near the end.
Big time. All right, so let's go with the next one. This one's interesting. So the Ravens defense coordinator, Mike McDonald, head coach now of the Seahawks. What an interesting move. I want to know, I guess I start this off. I give this actually a grade of an A. I think this is a great move. So the Ravens, on average, had the 7th best total defense with McDonald as defensive coordinator. They also averaged the 2nd fewest points allowed with McDonald as the defense coordinator of the Ravens. Now, is that just the talent of the Ravens? Maybe. However, we just saw in the playoffs how they struggled in the first half against Mahomes. But I do think the Seahawks were underwhelming on defense. They were the 30th ranked defense last year, despite having Tariq Woolen, top corner, Devin Witherspoon, great rookie year, Bobby Wagner, who I believe led the team in tackles again, and Julian Love, who is a very, very young safety, but he did have a career year with the Seahawks. I think, truthfully, McDonald brings something that the Seahawks are looking for. I enjoyed Pete Carroll as head coach. I thought he was a great head coach. But we take a look at this new, refreshing, young Mike McDonald, see what he brings. My only concern is the offensive side of the ball. We saw Geno Smith regress from last year to what he was this year. Not as efficient, not as effective, can't make the big-time play. I'm a little bit concerned with that. Also, you have to deal with Jackson Smith and Jigba, whether or not he is living up to where he was drafted. Is he a bust? We'll have to wait and see. And it looks like the running backs are health-wise not playing well, but I do think McDonald brings some youth, brings some energy, and I think could continue the culture that Pete Carroll said. I will give this grade an A for Mike McDonald as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. What say you?
I have A-. Okay, it's interesting. The Seahawks go from having the oldest coach in the league to having the youngest.
Yeah.
Oldest to youngest, which is interesting. The only reason I'd take the minus, put the minus on there instead of a straight A, is he's really only worked with the Ravens, and he's so young. I think that he's never been a head coach before. So whether he can bring the quality and the talent level and the exceptional defense to the rest of the team like he did at the Ravens for the Ravens defense. I mean, in the playoff game, even though the Ravens offense booted, it wasn't the defense's fault. They played great, I thought. They kept the Chiefs to only 17 points. I thought that was they should have won that game. He had a top rank. He was top ranked in the defense for scoring, led the league in takeaways, top 9 in points allowed, yards allowed, takeaways. So he's a great defensive coach, and he had the Ravens having the number 1 defense. So I think he can improve the Seattle's defense, which is okay. He can make it one of the better ones. So you mentioned some of the talented players on the Seahawks that can probably perform better under him. What he can do on offense remains to be seen. And as you mentioned, Geno Smith regressed a little bit after being the comeback player of the year 2 years ago. So it's a work in progress, but I'll give it an A-.
All right, the next one we got going is former Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris gets the job to be the head coach of the Falcons, which he already was back in 2020 when he coached the team as the head coach for 11 games. So my grade for this would be an A. I'm giving this an A. He's been a head coach before. He did have one winning season with Tampa Bay back in 2010, and in 2020, when Dan Quinn started 0-5, he finished out the year 4-7. Not a bad first time as a head coach with the Falcons. So the Falcons are going with, who can we bring in to create some stability, who knows the team, knows how we run things here. They did a great job at hiring a guy that was already there. Now, you could also go the Dan Quinn route, but you did fire him 4 years ago. Don't think that would have worked out. What I find interesting about this is that the Falcons actually were pretty underwhelming on defense this year. I think Raheem Morris, because look at what he did with the Rams. The Rams defense last year, or in 2022, was not great. Was really not that great. This season, the offensive line sucked. The offensive line was better, but the defensive side, with the amount of young talent that the Rams had on the defensive side, to get them to play the way they did the back half of the year, I think that's pretty good for the Falcons, and especially because, like I said, they were underwhelming. He coached. We remember this. Look how dominant the Rams defense was back in 2021. He was the DC of the Rams back then. So you could already tell he could coach a pretty good defense. I think they need to draft a quarterback. I think he needs to utilize Bijan Robinson better. I think Kyle Pitts needs a bigger say in, how he's used in the offense. That's a task that Raheem Morris has got to, sort of nail. If you don't have the quarterback or you stick with Desmond Ridder, it's not going to be a great first season for you. But as it stands, I like Raheem Morris a lot. I think he could bring a lot to the Falcons. I'll give the grade an A. What say you?
C-.
Ooh.
Yeah. He's 4-7 as the interim coach in 2020. That was nothing to write home about. He was 1-3. Had one winning record in 3 years as a head coach 10 years ago, which wasn't anything to write home about. I think he should be able to improve their defense a little bit, right? He did quite a bit for the Rams. He was able to recruit Zach Robinson as the Rams' offensive coordinator to be his offensive coordinator, so maybe that's a plus. But the main reason I give the C- is not so much about Raheem Morris. It's more about the Falcons' head office, right? Yeah. And they let their egos get in the way of bringing in the winningest coach in NFL history, Bill Belichick. And I think they're going to regret it. They're going to regret that big time.
Yeah, I think you're holding a little bit of a grudge there. But let's get into the next head coaching hire. So former Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales gets the job to be the head coach of the Panthers. Now, I thought the Panthers head coaching hires may be the last ones. I thought Dave Tepper may actually hire a head coach last. Well, no, it wasn't the case. He hired him, I think, third or fourth to last when this head coaching carousel was going on. So for my grade with Dave Canales, I'm giving it a C. I'm giving it a C. Here's where I'll give him credit. He did help Baker revitalize his career and was the coach, the quarterback's coach for the Seahawks during Geno Smith's Comeback Player of the Year achievement. I think that honestly, this might have been a little bit of an impulsive decision because we just saw what he did with Baker Mayfield, and I guarantee you the front office and especially Tepper were like, let's see if we can do that with Bryce Young. I think that's really the main reason why they hired him was to try to replicate what he did with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield and hope it applies to Bryce Young. I really don't see this working out in the long term. I really don't. Because the defense has been pretty good the past couple seasons, but he's really unproven as a head coach. He only had 1 year during his entire coaching career being in a major coach or coordinator role, and that was last year as OC of the Bucs. He hasn't really had a major role, and now he's going for 1 year OC to now being a head coach. I don't love this move for the Panthers. I think this was an impulse decision. They're trying to replicate what he did with Geno Smith 2 years ago, Baker this past year. They're hoping it applies to Bryce Young. I give this a C. What's your grade for Dave Canales?
I'm giving it a B+.
Wow.
For most of the reasons you just mentioned. Okay.
You see it differently.
Yeah, I give it a B+ for most of the things that you just said. Okay. He got the most out of Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had the best year he's ever had. He looked great out there. And now he's going to be their quarterback going forward for several more years. And if they can hang on to their receivers at Tampa, they should be, their offense can look really good and only improve from where it was in 2023. But we'll see without Dave Canales as the OC there, whether that will come true or not. He did, as you said, Geno Smith was the comeback player of the year under him as the offensive coordinator, and he got a lot of mileage out of Russell Wilson, who played great. His best years were with Seattle when Canales was there. He does have the limited leadership experience. That's a minus, but the whole reason they're bringing him in here is to try to get Bryce Young going and try to unlock his talent in the NFL, which he showed that he had when he was at Alabama as a college player. So that's the big bet they're making, and it looks like he's capable of doing that. If he's able to succeed in doing that, then maybe I'm sure they'll win more than one game.
I would agree with that as well.
So I give him a B+ on that one.
So this was the big one, the big hire. Jim Harbaugh got signed as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. My grade for this is an A+. An A+. This is the perfect hire. The perfect hire. He created a very, very phenomenal system with Michigan. It took them a little while, but when the system worked, they just won a national championship. In his introductory press conference, he said he wants to win multiple Super Bowls. I think he's capable of doing that. His style of football is very old school. It's physical defense and ground and pound. A report came out today is that the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, Saquon Barkley is at the top of his list when acquiring talent. What does that mean? Austin Eckler was not satisfied being a Los Angeles Charger due to contractual issues. Well, Jim Harbaugh says, okay, we'll get Saquon Barkley, and we'll keep up this mentality of hard-nosed physical defense and ground and pound. And I think it'll work out because Austin Eckler is not a great runner. He's a better receiving back, which you can get, not maybe to the level of Austin Eckler, but you could replicate that with a couple other backs. Running the football is going to be a big part of this offense. Keeping Justin Herbert away from having to make the big-time plays and forcing a lot of the offense on him. I think this is a great hire. I think the defense was the major issue. I think we could all agree with this. The defense was the main issue when it came to the Los Angeles Chargers. Completely undercoached with Brandon Staley and very, very underwhelming. I think that changes with Jim Harbaugh. For me, A+ through and through, probably the best hire of the entire coaching carousel. What do you give Harbaugh to the Chargers? What do you give that?
I agree with you, A+. For basically all the same reasons. He's a winner, He's won everywhere he's been. 4 out of the 5 years he's in the NFL. He was a winner. He took him to the Super Bowl. Couldn't beat his brother. But he got a lot out of Colin Kaepernick, who never played much. Never played great after Jim Harbaugh left, so I think he can get a lot out of Justin Herbert. One thing I wonder about a little bit is whether he'll draft J.J. McCarthy in the first round.
Not a chance.
He said
you signed Justin Herbert to a massive deal.
Yeah, but he said that he thinks that J.J. McCarthy is one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever to play.
Michigan quarterbacks.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't do that. Maybe he'll draft one of that running back.
Blake Corum.
Blake Corum, right? I'm sure he's going to draft some of his players.
100%.
Yeah, so that will be interesting to watch. Who's going to be his OC? That's a question mark, right? So he's going to have to bring in an OC. I think that he's definitely an upgrade for the Chargers. Smart move by them to pick him up. A+ grade. We'll see what the Chargers do next year.
I think it's going to be very, very fun to watch. All right, the next one is Brian Callahan, former OC of the Cincinnati Bengals. My grade for Brian Callahan as now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans is a B-. So, familial-wise, his dad, Bill Callahan, was a coach of the Raiders back in 2002 when they made the Super Bowl. So, within the family, he has a winning coach as a dad. He worked with some pretty damn good quarterbacks, I would say. Peyton Manning, Hall of Fame quarterback. Matt Stafford, maybe future Hall of Fame quarterback. And Joe Burrow, who we've seen literally has to put the offense on his back time after time again behind a very, very poor offensive line. So he's been able to work with a number of quarterbacks, and I think that's actually a plus for a team like the Tennessee Titans, whose offensive line is not great. You're going to need to build that up. Who Will Levis, he needs to reach his full potential. We saw he works great with play action and great with the run game. Now, can you enhance his game and reinforce his game to make sure he doesn't turn the ball over and has a higher completion percentage? We'll have to wait and see. But for me, this is a B-. The offensive side of the ball needs a little bit of work. I think with some refinement, Will Levis could be a pretty good quarterback. Am I saying he'll be top 10? No, I'm not saying that. But can he be, viable in the league? Maybe make the playoffs as a wild card eventually? Yeah, probably. I do think this is a pretty decent hire. Brian Callahan, for me, is a B-. The defense needs a little bit of work. I would probably prefer if they kept Mike Vrabel, but I'm not the owner of the Titans. You decided to choose Bengals offense coordinator Brian Callahan. I'll give that grade a B. What do you grade Brian Callahan to the Titans as?
I give it a B+. I think his work with Joe Burrow was exceptional. They went to a Super Bowl. They won 2 conference title games in the 2 years that Burrow was healthy. I think he'll be a mentor for Will Levis, which is really important for a young quarterback. I think he can jumpstart that offense, which was terrible this past year. They won't have Derrick Henry. He's going to be a free agent, probably gone. They need to fix the offensive line. The weakness here and why he wouldn't get a higher grade, which is pretty high, a B+, right? You got him B-, I got him B+. He's never been a head coach, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, the first-time head coaches, although we did just see D'Amico Ryans put on an absolute show coaching-wise, and it all worked out, so we'll have to wait and see. But speaking about, kind of first-time head coaches, the next one, It's Antonio Pierce. They finally listened to their players. Mark Davis finally listened to his players and said, let's go hire Antonio Pierce. So my grade for this as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I give this an A+ as well. Because of the fact that the players wanted him, Mark Davis finally listened to his players and didn't make the same mistake as they did with Rich Bisaccia. He's a players forward coach. We saw that this season. He decided, you know what? He realized Jimmy Garoppolo is a detriment to this team. Let me fill in with Aiden O'Connell. The defense has looked better with Pierce as the head coach than it did with Josh McDaniels or John Gruden or whoever else. The defense looked better than years prior. It used to be, on average, the 30th ranked defense. It wasn't as bad this year. The actual defensive rank for the Raiders this season under Antonio Pierce was 15th in the league. They also gave up the 9th fewest points per game. So Antonio Pierce knows how to coach. He knows how to coach. And I think the real question is, how is he with developing and drafting players? You're probably going to need to draft a quarterback. We'll have to wait and see. Now, once again, I mentioned this earlier. You signed Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator. He has spoken very highly about Caleb Williams. He likes Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams likes him. The insane move would be trade up to number 1 or number 2, draft Caleb Williams, and start this process. I think that would be a pretty insane move. But for me, players forward coach, players love him as a coach. Building up that culture is very, very important, especially within that environment of Las Vegas and with a young team who is hungry to win. You bring in a players coach, build up a good culture. Normally, good things happen, like playoff appearances happen. I thought they would be the last team in the AFC West, and they ended up being second in the AFC West. Shows you what good coaching can do for you. What is your grade for Antonio Pierce as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders?
I give him a B. Okay, I give the Raiders credit. They finally got it right. When they have an interim coach that does reasonably well, they at least hired him. The other guy, what was it?
Rich Bisaccia.
Rich Bisaccia, right? He took them to playoffs, right? And they let him go. What a mistake. And then they brought in Josh McDaniel, who he was terrible and got fired. So, I give Antonio Pierce credit for rallying the players, but he did go 5-4.
He did.
I mean, he didn't. It was just a little bit better than 500. They didn't make the playoffs, and they, if he'd made the playoffs, then that would have been a whole different story in terms of my ranking. I would have given him a much higher score. But I do think that the players like him. He rallied them. Max Crosby said that he'd ask for a trade if Pierce was not picked. He's only been a coach since 2022, so he's still got a lot to learn. We have to wonder whether maybe this was a flash in the pan. They could have had Mike Vrabel.
Could have.
They could have had Bill Belichick.
Could have.
So they bring him back. I think that they should have learned that lesson with Bisaccia. What's the guy?
Rich Bisaccia?
Bisaccia, right, because he was the one that took him to the playoffs after he got the interim job. So, but we'll see. I don't think it's a bad choice. I gave it a B.
And the final one, the final hire, and this was pretty quick in the
almost automatic.
The hiring process, and that's
Almost
Gerard
the next day.
Mayo to the New England Patriots, former linebacker coach for the Patriots, former linebacker for the New England Patriots. He was signed as the next head coach, as the heir apparent to Bill Belichick, and for me, this is a B-. This is a B-. This league is going towards more of offensive league. You see the coaches in the Super Bowl now. What are they? They're offensive coaches. And a linebacker coach to head coach, we'll need to wait and see how that works. But this is a B-. It's kind of the same realm of Antonio Pierce, where the players would prefer if Gerard Mayo was the head coach, and he ended up being the head coach. Now, we all heard the report, if you're listening to a little bit of Gerard Mayo and the New England Patriots, he's willing to spend money, which is something that is different from Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick tries to get market value, if not less. Most of the time, it's a lot less than market value. He's willing to spend money. That's good. He's willing to hire people outside of former players, former draft picks, and his former buddies. That's good. He just hired Alex Van Pelt as the OC. Now, DeMarcus Covington, defensive line coach, he's their DC. I don't hate that move either. Don't hate the move. But he's willing to hire guys who aren't his buddies. He's also been the head coach of a couple great Patriots defenses this season, last season. He's been there, understands the Patriots defense, and I think that could repeat this season. But offense has been a major problem for the Patriots for the past 4 seasons. Does that fix with Alex Van Pelt and potentially drafting a quarterback at 2 or 3, Maybe. If it's Drake May, I'm not going to like it. I don't think Drake May is going to be a great quarterback. Jaden Daniels, maybe. But I just think that I don't think Gerard Mayo brings what Jim Harbaugh brings, what Antonio Pierce could bring culture-wise, Raheem Morris might be able to bring. You know, I don't hate the move. I think for a player's perspective, it's a phenomenal choice. He's within the organization. Robert Kraft likes him. Players love him. I think if we're talking about stability and fan likability, I think this would probably be an A. But for, an outsider perspective, we're talking about the future of the Patriots drafting-wise. I'm hearing a lot of good things. Spending money, hiring some right guys outside the organization. We're going to have to wait and see how he develops players this season, whether or not, he makes some decisions on personnel, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, or whoever else, receiver-wise. We'll have to wait and see. But for me, Gerard Mayo's head coach of the Patriots, this move is a B-. What about you? What do you think, Gerard Mayo, head coach of the New England Patriots?
I give it a C. Okay? Belichick coaches are usually failures as head coaches.
That's true.
And this is what this is. He's a Belichick coach, and they generally have not been very successful. He doesn't have much pressure on him, I don't think, because the Patriots played so poorly in 2023. But you make a very good point. He's a defensive coach, and the problem on the Patriots is offense.
Yeah.
Terrible. He's got money to spend. They have the most cap space, right? They've got a ton of cap space. Can he bring in the right players? That will be a big question mark. And do those players want to come to New England with a rookie coach who's only been a coach since 2019 and has a defensive mindset? So yeah. I give it a C.
So there it goes. Those are all the grades for the Coaching Carousel 2024 edition. I think this offseason is going to be pretty good when it comes to now players. And we may grade some major player movements when it comes to the end of this upcoming offseason, which begins in around middle of March. But that does wrap up this topic and this episode of the Harvey Hour. We thank you all for tuning in today's episode of the Harvey Hour. Thank you for sticking around. We appreciate it greatly. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening as always. If you want to see the video version, go over to youtube.com/@the Harvey Hour. And, on the opposite of that, if you want to listen to the show or take it wherever you want, take it on the go. You go to Spotify, Harvey Hour, follow us over there. We appreciate it. For this episode of the Harvey Hour, though, my name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been the host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday. We begin our Super Bowl hype. We're going to talk about it on Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Happy birthday, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.